Yeah, I mean, it's really never enough. It's like the more they give us, the more we want.
Welcome to Counterpunch. My name is Phillip Thune, CEO of Textbroker, leading place to get written content, and the commissioner of the Digital Marketing League. We are very pleased to have with us Barry Schwartz, premier expert on Google, all things SEO. Barry was a speaker with me at one of our digital marketing leagues. So really pleased to have him back. Barry, welcome to Counterpunch.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be back.
And the way this works is I'm going to ask Barry a series of questions, 3 different questions. He will have 1 minute to answer. I will also have 1 minute to answer that same question. Cassandra is our judge today. She will score after each round who answered the question better, and we'll see who wins this episode of Counterpunch. I'm a little nervous here. Barry is the premier expert, so I'm the underdog, but we will see how it goes. Yeah, and again, with Barry, if you want to learn as much as you possibly can about what's going on with Google, what's going on with the search engines, my recommendation is follow him on Twitter. He's at RustyBrick on Twitter. But if you're not on Twitter, you're not following people on Twitter, definitely go to Search Engine Roundtable, SEOroundtable.com. Barry's giving you great information, multiple times a day, everything that's changing in the search engine world. All right. So with that said, let's get into it. We've got the 1 minute on the clock. Barry, first question I want to ask you, and then I'll give the answer as well, is, in the past few years, what do you think give Google some credit here. What do you think Google has done well, or the best thing they've done for people in SEO, people trying to rank highly on Google?
So I think Google's been trying harder to be much more transparent. I think you've seen that with more of the videos that Google's been doing, especially John Mueller, some of the YouTube channel stuff they've been doing across multiple personalities in the company, including Martin Splitt, Aurora, and a bunch of other Googlers. They hired Danny Sullivan, which, he comes from more of the publisher side, so that it also helps. So I think overall their transparency, their blog posts and so forth, I mean, it's not perfect. It could always get better, but I think they've been making a much more of an effort in the past couple of years to be more transparent around search.
Anything you'd like to see them do more of, do better?
Yeah, I mean, it's really never enough. It's like the more they give us, the more we want.
Right.
So if they tell us, the page experience update is coming, and these are the ranking signals in there, but we're like, all right, but how does that work? How much of a ranking signal is it? Is it a big ranking signal? Is it small? If the Google releases a core update, we tell them, all right, what does this core update hit? How does it actually impact us? I know when it first launched, Google's like, there's nothing you could do with core updates. And then we kind of fought with them. And we're like, hey, give us more advice. And eventually, like months and months later, Google came out with a blog post saying, here's our advice around core updates. So I think they're getting better in terms of transparency, but it's always like they tell us something, we want more and more. So it's like a no-win situation for them.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. All right. So Cassandra will put a minute back on the board. I'll give my version of that answer. And I think we could start the countdown. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do give them a lot of credit for trying to be more transparent, trying to give more information. We've had John, on Digital Marketing League, so he seems kind of ready and willing to answer questions the best he can. And so yeah, I give them credit. And there's always a but, like you said. It seems to me, the impact of rankings, and I know Google gets this, and I know it's kind of hard to figure out, but the impact of rankings on businesses or on people's careers sometimes can be so big. And even though they are trying to give more information, when you're trying to figure out what specifically happened to my website, sometimes there are places where you can kind of ask that question, but I'd love to see them expand that dramatically. Right. Well, how hard would it be to kind of hire 50 people, get them as trained as you can, even if they can't necessarily answer those kind of user questions, at least have some way to sort of funnel back that, because it just makes such a big difference. All right. All right. So we will reset the clock. So on that answer, I'm waiting for Cassandra to give me the scores. Barry, you answered that one better. Ah, there we go. The crowd goes wild. So Barry's got round one. All right. So let's jump quickly into round two. Usually there's a back and forth here, but I'm just going to keep asking Barry questions because, again, like I said, I'm a little intimidated here. He's the expert. Barry, we're recording this in the second half of 2021. This summer, or this year, basically, there's a lot of, besides the core updates, there's been a lot of kind of other updates that people have been talking about, people have been worried about. From your perspective, given that you probably know this better than anybody outside of Google, what do you think people have gotten wrong about the updates or the importance of updates? How do you see all these various updates and people's reactions to them?
Right. So you've been seeing a lot recently, especially like you said, over the summer, there's been lots of updates. Google announced several updates. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we had 2 core updates, the June and July core update. We had the Core Web page experience update, which involves Core Web Vitals. We had like 2 spam updates. We had a link spam update. I mean, it goes on and on in terms of the number of updates that were released. And Google tried to release them at specific times, but over one long period of time, Google said we're releasing the core or the page experience update from, I think it was June 15th to end of August. So we're still in the midst of that. And what I see constantly is people saying, I got hit by the Core Web Vitals update, or I got hit by the page experience update. And the reason for that, I think, is one is it's kind of like a long period of time in terms of how Google's releasing that update. The second reason is that core updates and Core Web Vitals updates, same name, core and core. So people are very much so confusing them. And you shouldn't think that you got hit by a Core Web Vitals or page experience update, because it's a very lightweight signal and you probably wouldn't even notice if you actually got hit by it.
Got it right, ending right on time. Yeah, no, and again, I think you're so much more of an expert on this stuff. From my perspective, if we reset the clock there, from my perspective in terms of confusion, and you were even mentioning this, right? The naming, right? Web Core Vitals update, right? So people are getting confused between that and maybe core updates, and which one's more important. I think, and again, Barry, I'm borrowing from your knowledge, but I think your view, as it's seen, is the core updates over the long term are the things that kind of matter the most. And so, yes, there's these other updates that have different names or different changes in the algorithm. And Core Web Vitals to me seems like maybe the most confusing. Right? If you score well on that, Google has said if you score well on that, that doesn't mean you necessarily get a better ranking. It's just sort of table stakes, right? Your site should be kind of fast. Your site should be in good shape. And so that's not going to necessarily ding you right away, Barry, as you said. But it's also not like suddenly if your site's in good shape, if the content's not great, if you don't have kind of content that people are linking to, you're not going to do well. All right, Cassandra's thinking that over. All right, somehow, I'm not even sure this is possible. Somehow, Cassandra says that I won that round. So that means that we're back to our final question, third question. Yes, there we go. Third question. This is for all of the marbles. And Barry, I'm going to ask you, there we go. I'm going to ask you about machine learning. I think it's been interesting. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, everybody is talking about it. It's impacting pretty much every business. When you have the amount of data that Google has or that Bing has, like it's mind-boggling, right? And so if there's any place that machine learning makes a lot of sense, artificial makes a lot of sense, it's with search. From your perspective, how do you see the search engines kind of implementing that? How much do they care about it? How, is any comments on how that could impact those of us who are trying to rank well?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, search engines will keep talking about the machine learning and AI. Just the other day, Microsoft announced for Bing that they're using something called MEB. I think they're calling it Make Every Feature Binary. And basically, Make Every Feature Binary. And basically that's using 100% of Bing's queries. We've recently heard about Google Mum. We heard about RankBrain. It goes on and on in terms of what Google and Microsoft are talking about around this machine learning AI stuff. What's interesting is how Microsoft Bing uses differently than Google, at least from my perspective. I think Microsoft is more like all in. They say they use it across everything for every purpose everywhere. Whereas Google's more selective, it seems like. Even when they release like RankBrain or BERT, they use it in a select number of queries and so forth. You can see it being used more with feature snippets. You can see it being used for specific spam cases and other ranking features. So it's very, very specific in terms of how Google uses it. And I think they do that because they want to be able to debug it better, whereas Microsoft just goes all in.
Got it. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's kind of helpful information for those of us, sort of thinking about it. It is going to impact almost every business, certainly businesses with huge amounts of data. We've got 1 minute on the clock. So I think from my perspective, I think this is something, again, I'm reading you as all the rest of our audience should be. One thing that you pointed out a little while back was that Google said, they're relying on machine learning in terms of finding spam. And so, from putting my Textbroker hat on, our clients are constantly ordering content for the most part, trying to help them rank better in the search results. And I'm still surprised by this. We still have people who are ordering two-star content. We rank our authors between 2 stars and 5 stars. 2 stars, admittedly, not great content. And so what's kind of fascinating, not surprising, but I think fascinating and impactful that people should know about if they're sort of like, well, I don't have the biggest budget. I can't necessarily afford the very best writers. It feels to me like you're probably wasting your time if your goal is to rank well on Google and you're sort of somehow shortcutting the content creation process. I think, what machine learning means, and I'm going to go over a little bit, but I think what machine learning means, and especially where Google says, oh yeah, we just have machine learning kind of tells us if the page is spammy or not. And if it's spammy, it's not going to get ranked. It means that you are, you're better off sort of going quality, less quantity, much higher quality, than just trying to kind of blanket it and produce as much content as you can and say, well, maybe the quality's not so good, but does that really matter? I think with machine learning, Google's like, yes, we can figure that out, and it's not going to help you. So that's it. I've gone over. I'm sure I'm going to get penalized for taking too much time. So this is the final question. Sort of the winner here wins the whole thing. And Cassandra, yep, no surprise. Barry, you won that one. So Barry wins 2-1, 2 questions to 1. Crowd appropriately goes wild. And Barry, we really appreciate your time. I do want to point you to Barry and my longer conversation. We had about a 45, 50-minute conversation at the very first Digital Marketing League in 2020, based Digital Marketing League for U.S. users. So you can get much more from Barry if you go to Digital Marketing League's website. Just Google Digital Marketing League. Again, I can't recommend highly enough that you follow Barry on Twitter at RustyBrick. You go to SEORoundtable.com or Search Engine Roundtable. Barry's always giving you the information you need in terms of what's the latest happening on Google. Barry, once again, thanks for being here, for being our guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And if you like this episode or you have, please press the like button. If you have any comments, please put them below. And of course, if you can subscribe, you'll always be updated anytime we have new videos. So that's it. Thank you.